Every afternoon after school, they laughed at Ngozi for smelling like pepper. Sharp, stubborn, and unforgiving. What they didn't know was that hidden beneath that scent was a voice the world would one day beg to hear. Ngozi's nose twitched as she washed her hands for the third time that evening, trying to scrub away the sharp scent of dried pepper powder. No matter how many times she washed, the smell clung stubbornly to her palms, her school uniform, even her school books. The moment she stepped into class every morning, some boys would sniff the air dramatically and shout, "Who brought ofe nsuka pepe?" Again, then they'd burst into laughter. The other girls covered their noses with exaggerated flair, whispering and giggling behind her back. Ngozi kept her head down. She had learned to swallow the sting in her chest like her mother swallowed dry eba on days there was no soup. Her mother, Mama Ngozi, was the most hardworking woman in Ogbete market. Every day before sunrise, she roasted, ground, and packed bags of pepper, fresh, dry, and yellow, as well as tomatoes and onions. Ngozi always helped after school, sweating through the smoky heat of their stall, arranging goods and answering customers with a tired but respectful smile. "This one will marry well," the older women would say, pinching her cheek fondly. But at school, she was Ngozi Pepper, the girl who stank like the market. It didn't matter that she had the clearest voice in choir or that she always came top 5 in class. Her dreams of becoming a singer were as small as her mother's stall beside the gutter. That night, as Ngozi sat beside a flickering kerosene lamp doing her homework, her mother placed a steaming plate of yam porridge in front of her. "My daughter, don't worry about their words," Mama said gently, wiping her hands on her wrapper. "One day, the same mouth that mocked you will shout your name with pride." Ngozi smiled faintly, but in her heart, she couldn't imagine how. The rainy season arrived in full, turning the red earth outside Ngozi's school into thick mud. On one such wet day, as students rushed to escape the downpour, Ngozi stayed behind near the school gate. Her classmates had taken shelter under the zinc awning, but she remained outside, her face upturned to the sky. The rain fell like a curtain, washing over her skin, soaking her hair and clinging to her faded uniform. It was there, standing in the rain, that she began to hum, softly at first, then louder. Ngozi's voice was like warm palm oil over hot rice, smooth, rich, and comforting. She closed her eyes and sang one of the songs she always sang while grinding pepper for her mother, a soulful Igbo melody her grandmother once taught her. Her voice rang through the school compound, rising above the noise of the rain. What she didn't know was that a student, Emeka, had stayed behind too, hidden behind the canteen's window, moved by the moment he took out his phone and recorded her without her knowing. The next morning, the video of Ngozi singing in the rain had already begun to make rounds. Emeka, unsure of what he had captured, uploaded a clip to his TikTok with the caption, "The girl they call Pepper just blew my mind." At first, only a few classmates liked and commented, but by evening, views began to surge. People from all over began sharing the video, commenting on her raw talent and praising the purity in her voice. Ngozi had no idea. She went about her usual routine, helping her mother in the market, cleaning, studying late. When she got to school the next day, everything had changed. There were whispers again, but this time not mocking ones. "Is that her? That's the girl with the voice." Some even smiled at her. Emeka approached her nervously, phone in hand, showing her the clip. Her heart skipped as she watched herself drenched in rain, eyes closed, voice rising like a prayer. Over 300,000 views. She blinked, stunned. I didn't know, she stammered. The teachers found out, and surprisingly, the principal called Ngozi into his office. Not to scold her, but to praise her. "You have a gift," he said, adjusting his glasses. That video, it gave me goosebumps. He asked her to sing at the upcoming cultural day. That was a shock. For the first time, the school's biggest event would not be led by the rich kids with stage makeup and Ankara costumes, but by Ngozi, the pepper seller's daughter. Mama Ngozi was even more surprised. When her daughter showed her the video, she dropped the tray she was arranging. Anne, my daughter, this is you?" she gasped. Her eyes welled with tears as she watched her child, a child who had suffered mockery, receive praises from strangers. "You see what I told you?" she whispered. "Your voice is your blessing." That night, Ngozi slept with her heart full of wonder and fear. The world had finally noticed her. But what came next? Days passed and the video continued to spread. Bloggers picked it up, local online radio stations posted it. A Lagos-based influencer commented, "Raw talent like this is why I still believe in Nigeria." Offers started trickling in. A small talent scout messaged Emeka asking to speak with Ngozi. Another woman from a children's talent foundation requested to sponsor her music classes. For a while, Ngozi's life became a blur of attention. She still helped her mother after school, but now people came to the market not just for pepper, but to take selfies with her. Some even offered to buy pepper they didn't need, just to say they bought from the famous girl's mother. At first it felt magical, but soon the pressure crept in. People began to expect more videos. Comments shifted. When will she post again? She should join Instagram. Don't let this one fade. Ngozi began to feel the weight of expectation, something she had never carried before. The day of the school's cultural celebration arrived. Ngozi had never stood before so many people with all eyes on her. Her mother had sewn her a simple dress from leftover wrappers, red and yellow like crushed pepper. Her hair was braided with beads that clicked as she walked. As she stood backstage, she could hear murmurs from the audience. "That's the girl. She's even finer in real life." When it was time, the lights dimmed slightly and her name was called. Her heart pounded. But then she remembered the rain, the song, and her grandmother's voice. She walked onto the stage, took a breath, and began to sing. Her voice was steadier than she expected. It rose, wrapped the hall in a warm hush, and brought even the noisiest boys to silence. When she ended, there was a beat of stunned quiet, then thunderous applause. The whole school stood up. Even the principal clapped with both hands. Ngozi felt tears stain her eyes. For the first time, she wasn't just the pepper seller's daughter. She was Ngozi, the girl with the golden voice. After the cultural day performance, invitations poured in from other schools and local events. One was from a nearby private school that wanted her to perform at their prize-giving day. Another came from a small television program that featured young talents from Eastern Nigeria. Each time Ngozi received an invitation, her mother's eyes widened. "God is answering our prayers faster than I expected," Mama Ngozi often muttered, looking both grateful and overwhelmed. But with every new opportunity came challenges. Transport fare to attend some events was a problem. Ngozi still had to sell in the market. Some people mocked them, saying they were getting proud. Now that her daughter is famous, She doesn't sell pepper on time again, one woman hissed one day. Mama Ngozi ignored them, but the pain was clear in her eyes. Fame, it seemed, was a gift with thorns. One night, while Ngozi was doing her homework, Emeka rushed into their compound, panting with excitement. Ngozi, check your messages, he said breathlessly. Our producer from Lagos just commented on your video. She rushed to her brother's small Itel phone and saw the message. This girl needs to be on his studio mic. DM me. His name was DJ Supersonic, known for discovering young talent in Nigeria. Ngozi stared at the message, heart racing. Was this really happening? Mama Ngozi read it over her shoulder, then simply said, let's pray first. That night, they knelt by the kerosene lamp. Lord, if this is your hand, let your light shine on our path. But if this is a trap, break it, Mama whispered. The family didn't sleep much that night. Supersonic called the next day. His voice was warm and excited. I want her in Lagos for studio recording. She's special, he said. The problem? He wouldn't pay for transport or accommodation yet. Let her come down first. Let me hear her leave. Then we'll talk deals. It was a test, and they knew it. Mama Ngozi sold off half her stock at a loss, and her neighbor helped them book 2 seats on a night bus to Lagos. They packed the essentials: a wrapper, sponge, the song lyrics Ngozi had written in a notebook, and a small flask of rice and stew. The ride to Lagos was long, bumpy, and filled with prayers. Ngozi watched the night lights pass by, her eyes full of both fear and hope. Arriving in Lagos was like stepping into a new world. Ngozi had never seen so many cars, such tall buildings, or so many people walking fast without looking back. They navigated with a printed address and borrowed phone credit. Supersonic's studio was in Surulere, small but professional. The moment Ngozi stepped into the recording room, something changed. As the mic lit up red and her voice filled the headphones, Supersonic paused his laptop and stared. Chineke, he muttered, you're even better in real life. After our first take, he shook his head, smiling. This is not talent. This is a miracle. Ngozi grinned shyly. Mama Ngozi wiped tears silently in the corner of the studio. Supersonic insisted on creating a song that reflected her story. We'll call it Pepper Girl, he said. Let them know where you come from. Ngozi loved the idea. She poured her emotions into the lyrics, writing lines like, they laughed at the scent, but now they pay rent to hear my voice. Supersonic helped with arrangement, beats, and backup vocals. The song was raw, honest, and unforgettable. It was uploaded to YouTube and shared on TikTok with a short clip of her singing the chorus in a red and yellow wrapper. Within a week, the video hit 2 million views. Celebrities reposted it. Radio stations played it. Even Mama Ngozi became a local celebrity at the market. The smell of pepper had become a symbol of pride. Emails came flooding in. One came from a Nigerian American Music Academy offering a full scholarship for Ngozi to study music abroad. She'll join our Rising Star program in Atlanta, the email read. Mama Ngozi was confused. Atlanta? Where is that? Is it past Abuja? Ngozi couldn't believe it. Atlanta? It sounded like a name from a Nollywood movie, but the offer was real. They sent video calls, official documents, and even an offer to cover flight, visa, and accommodation. Suddenly, the pepper seller's daughter was preparing for her first international journey. She would leave Nigeria in a month. The streets that once laughed at her now echoed her songs. On her last day in the market, customers flooded their stall, not to buy pepper, but to take pictures, hug her, and say goodbye. Even the women who once mocked her brought gifts. You made us proud, one said. Mama Ngozi wore her best lace wrapper and kept smiling, though her eyes betrayed the sadness of parting. Ngozi sang one last time in the market square. Her voice rose above the chatter, above the smell of crayfish and tomatoes, and wrapped the crowd in stillness. Even the agberos stood quietly. When she finished, the applause was thunderous. One old woman whispered, "That voice will shake the world." Ngozi had never seen a plane up close, much less imagined herself sitting in one. Her first time on a flight was filled with wonder. She clutched the armrest as the plane lifted into the sky. She looked out of the window, seeing clouds like mountains of cotton. Mama had braided her hair tightly, and she wore a simple gown with beaded jewelry. Even the flight attendant smiled warmly at her, saying, "You're the girl from TikTok, right?" At the Atlanta airport, representatives from the academy were waiting with a sign that read, "Welcome, Ngozi." Her heart raced. The school was huge, filled with students from all over the world. But everyone wanted to meet the Nigerian girl whose song had made them cry, even though they didn't understand a word of Igbo. The academy introduced her to things she'd only seen on phones: grand pianos, music studios with 10 speakers, classrooms with soundproof walls. At first, Ngozi struggled. Her accent was different. Her English was heavy. People looked at her clothes, her simple slippers. Some whispered, some laughed. But when she opened her mouth to sing, the whole school stood still. Her music professor, a stern man named Mr. Fisher, said, This is why I teach. Your voice doesn't need perfect grammar. It carries soul." Slowly, Ngozi began to find her place. She made friends, improved her songwriting, and learned how to play instruments she had never touched before. Every night, Ngozi called home. Her mother always asked, "Have you eaten? And do they treat you well?" Her younger siblings would fight over the phone, shouting, "Sing for us, sing." Sometimes Ngozi cried after the calls. She missed the sound of the market, the smell of dry pepper, her mother's soft hand on her back when she couldn't sleep. But those moments gave her strength. She wrote new songs, one called "Far From My Fire," another titled "Ogbete Dreams." Her classmates loved them. Her voice remained true, rooted in the market soil of home, even as she soared higher. The Academy nominated Ngozi to perform at a prestigious youth music festival in New York. It was the biggest crowd she'd ever faced. Thousands of faces, bright lights. She wore a modern version of her market dress, proudly holding her roots in every stitch. When she sang "Pepper Girl," people cheered. Some cried. Her voice, wrapped in Igbo and English, crossed oceans and languages. A popular American musician tweeted, "That Nigerian girl, she just baptized my soul with fire and love." Ngozi trended again, not just in Nigeria, but globally. Big music labels began to circle. Contracts arrived, filled with tempting promises: millions, fame, global tours. But her mother insisted on caution. Money is not everything. Read the fine print. Keep your voice and your name, she warned. With the help of a Nigerian lawyer in the US, they reviewed offers. Ngozi turned down some deals that tried to change her sound or control her story. Eventually, she signed with a label that promised creative freedom. The world would hear her voice, but she would still be Nosy from Enugu, the pepper seller's daughter. 2 years later, Ngozi returned to Nigeria for the first time. The airport was flooded with fans, banners. A small choir even sang her songs. She wept openly. I never knew people would love me this much, she whispered. Back in the market, Mama Ngozi stood proud beside her newly expanded stall, now covered and tiled. My daughter is home, she said, embracing her. The same women who once sneered now called her a daisy. The boys who mocked her asked for autographs. The smell of pepper still hung in the air, but now it carried pride. Ngozi visited her old school. The dusty classrooms hadn't changed, but the students had. They screamed with joy when they saw her. She was once like you, the principal said during assembly. Mocked, ignored, but now she's our pride. She sang again in that same hall, this time as a global star. When she finished, she looked at one girl who sat alone, shy and withdrawn. They laughed at me too, Gozi said, kneeling beside her. But I kept singing, you must keep dreaming too. That girl smiled. Hope lit up her eyes. With part of her earnings, Ngozi started the Pepper Voice Foundation, a charity for children from poor homes with artistic talent. The goal? To help those like her, market children with big voices and bigger dreams. They gave scholarships, music kits, and even created a free music summer camp. Mama Nosi became the director of food and welfare. No hungry child should sing with an empty stomach, she declared. That foundation would go on to produce the next generation of dreamers, from muddy feet to international stages. Ngozi released her debut album titled From Market to Mic. It was a mixture of Afrobeat, highlife, gospel, and soul. The tracks included songs about her childhood, her journey, and the scent of home. One track, Rain Voice, retold the story of the rainy day that changed her life. The album topped charts. One track was featured in a Nollywood film. Another was used in a UN campaign. Her music became a bridge connecting pepper sellers to presidents, children to dreams, and silence to song. With fame came pressure. There were days she wanted to disappear. Comments became cruel again. She's changing. She sold out. She started losing sleep, doubting herself. But each time she returned to her roots, visiting the market, talking to Mama, listening to children sing under mango trees. One weekend, she traveled with no phones, just a notebook and her voice. She wrote a song called Peace No Get Price. When she sang it at a small Lagos show, people cried. Peace, she learned, was not in the noise, but in the quiet truth of who you are. At a studio session, she met Chuka, a soft-spoken sound engineer with deep dimples and a quiet laugh. He'd loved her not for her fame, but for her honesty. They became friends, then more. One day, he surprised her with a beat inspired by market drums and murder pesos. Together, they created My Pepper Love, a love song with playful lyrics and deep emotion. The video showed two young lovers grinding pepper, singing in their rain, and laughing like children. It became a national hit, and their hearts became one. Chuka didn't propose at a fancy restaurant. He did it at Ogbete Market. With Mama Nosi's blessing, he cleared the space, hired local drummers, and waited. When Ngozi arrived for her usual visit, the drum started. The crowd gathered. Chuka knelt beside her mother's pepper tray and held up the rain. Ngozi gasped, then burst into laughter and tears. Yes, she cried. The crowd roared. Even old Mama Ijoma danced. The market had once been her shame. Now it was her joy, her stage, her beginning. Their wedding was traditional, colorful, and loud. It was held in Enugu, with masquerades dancing and women ululating. Celebrities came, yes, but so did market women, school children, and the A1 choir from her old school. Ngozi wore a wrapper patterned with tiny peppers and musical notes. As she walked in, her childhood song played softly in the background. And when it was time to speak, she said simply, "I am who I am because I never stopped singing in the storm." Ngozi joined the Ministry of Arts to advocate for music education in rural schools. Her song, One Voice, became an anthem for young talents. Through partnerships, her foundation built music studios in villages. She was awarded several times, but her speech always returned to one truth: talent is everywhere. Sometimes it smells like pepper, sometimes it's barefoot. We just need to listen. Years passed. Mama Nodzi grew older, but her smile remained the same. She sat at her new home, built by her daughter, with a wrapper tied neatly and a radio nearby, playing Nozi's latest single. I knew from the start, she often told visitors. Her voice was never ordinary. Even when the world laughed, I could hear the fire in it. That fire had become a light for millions. Ngozi released a memoir titled The Pepper Seller's Daughter. It told everything: the shame, the rain, the rise. It became a bestseller, studied in schools and translated into 5 languages. One line stood out: "The world may laugh at your smell, but they will bow to your song." Children now dressed like her during career day. Girls in wrappers danced on stages saying, "I'm Ngozi Pepper." She had become more than a person. She was a symbol. Years later, Ngozi sat beneath a mango tree near her old home, surrounded by children. One asked, "Auntie Ngozi, will you stop singing one day?" She smiled, touching her throat. "Even when I don't sing, the song will still be in the wind." And as the children gathered around her to listen, the rain began to fall gently. Ngozi looked up, let the drops kiss her face, and whispered a melody only the clouds could hear. The pepper seller's daughter had become a legend, and her voice would never be forgotten. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share for interesting tales.